Is Russell Wilson the Broncos' best option to win games in 2024? What do you guys think on today's mailbag?
Yes, to win games in 2024, yes. But it doesn't do anything for 2025 or the year after that. I think it's just this year he will be the best case scenario. Other than that, I don't think he's the best fit for the Broncos long term. So to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, I'd say no.
Oh.
I'd say Kirk Cousins is, but you're kind of splitting hairs there, and that would cost probably way, way, way more.
Yep.
And so it'd be a bad decision, but I think if your only goal was to win games next year, you could probably squeak out another win if you got Kirk instead of Russ.
And that's kind of where the Danimal, our friend, is coming in with this question. He says, unpopular opinion time. If we can't unload Russ's contract, we should keep him for 2 more years. Use every ounce of draft capital we have to build for the future. Go to the bargain bin in free agency and roll that cap space forward. Build a team that can insulate a rookie after cutting Russ is affordable. Give our future quarterback a situation like Dak Prescott walked into in Dallas when he was drafted with a top 5 offensive line and rock star running back. Then we use the cap space we saved to fill the holes and make our Super Bowl run. It's not a rebuild, but trying to rush this quarterback situation will cause more suffering. What do you think, the Danimal?
I think that's 100% right. I think the only problem is that nobody is looking at this from a long-term perspective. I feel like from George Payton to Sean Payton, everybody is looking at this like we got to win now. It has to make it happen now. Where in all reality, we're not in a good space financially or with the players that we have on the roster. But if we just took the time to build for 2 years, I know it's not the best idea, but I think it's the best thing to really be successful long term. But nobody's looking at it from that way.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough part, and that's the issue with the Broncos the past 8 years since 2016, since they haven't had a winning season since then, is every year it's, no, we're going all in this year, all in this year, all in this year. And when you're in a true win now scenario where the Broncos were from 2012 to 2015, and you can go all in every year and push things down the road, when you have a team meant to do that, when you don't have a team that's meant to go all in and you try to go all in, then it just leads to 8 and 9 seasons like the Broncos just had. And is that them maxing out their team right now? If so, you do need to take a step back and kind of, it doesn't have to be a full rebuild. If you don't want to call it a rebuild, it can be a reboot. You don't have to openly say it either. And that's what the Broncos are going to be doing. They're going to be doing this reboot right now if they move on from Russ, because the best option to win right now probably is Russell Wilson for this year. Is it the best long term? Maybe not. So take a little step back, and then you can go all in moving forward.
Yeah, and I'd say it's the best for both. I mean, because that way you get to build a team, and then you can go get a quarterback later. Plus, right now you'll be the best that you've been. I mean, as much as like 8 and 9 is what it gets you when you do all this stuff. This is the first time it's gotten them 8 and 9. Like, this is their best season in 6 years, 7, depending on how you count it, I guess. So when you're right here, I don't think that you necessarily need to make a big change there. You just need to start building. And it's tough to build when you use another first-round pick on another quarterback, especially one who's going to be worse.
Okay, so then what about this? This is a different angle from Foco Buff. Says, what are your thoughts on if we eat all of Russ's cap space this year, trade back a few picks, like to 20 or to 18, and get some more draft picks, but still have a solid first-rounder, and go out and get Shedeur Sanders early in 2025 and embrace not being a contender for once this year? I just can't see how giving away the farm this year to get Drake May helps us in the long run. We already lost so many first-round picks, and it shows. Go Broncos.
We would really have to tank, though. Like, we have to eat all that dead cap and then tank the season to be the first pick to ensure we get Shedeur. Like, I don't think people want to sit through that either.
Sean doesn't.
No. And I think that's the tough part. Like, it's very clear to see that this team could be in the playoffs this year, potentially next year, and then move on from Russ. Like, that's a good scenario. You're getting people fired up about Denver again, about the city, about the team. Like, there hasn't been a winning season in a long time, and I think people aren't expecting it anymore at this point. So I don't know if we should tank to get Shedeur. I don't know.
It just sucked for Shedeur? Is that what the slogan would be?
Whoa. I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah, maybe not my favorite plan.
Is there another S word? Stink for Shador. There you go.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of trading down. It just depends on how the board falls. Like if you're sitting there at 12 and Brock Bowers is there, like it would be kind of silly to trade down out of that spot, because as much as it sounds good to have 2 first rounders instead of 1, there's a big difference between having pick 12 and having pick 24 and 25. Because if you wind up just missing on both of those, first of all, you're screwed, and the odds of missing on both of those probably about the same as missing on one at 12. If you hit on one and miss on the other back there, then odds are you're hitting on a guy who's not as good as if you'd hit on a guy at 12. So it in some ways would make sense to add more draft picks, but it just depends on the scenario. Like if you hit a point at 12 where you say like, hey, there's like 6 guys who we really like right here and you want to trade back to 15, 16, you still snag one of those, it makes sense. But if you wind up trading down and you miss on the pick that you make late in the first round, you're going to feel really, really dumb in a couple years to not come away with a talented player.
Okay, you hear, let's put the final 3:03 on this mailbag on the clock, and let's start with this. Henry, how would you feel about Shedeur Sanders in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough to evaluate a quarterback at this point. I mean, what were we saying about Sam Howell? At this point, in his cycle, we were saying
pick?
Sam Howell's like going to be maybe the number 1 pick. Turns out to be what, like a 5th rounder, 6th rounder, something like that. You know, last year, what were we saying about Jaden Daniels? Like, yeah, maybe he's a draft pick, and now he's like a top 3 pick probably. What were we saying about Bo Nix? Is like, oh, what a bust. He never did anything in college. And now we're saying like, oh, actually, like potential first. Like, so much changes in college football unless you're a guy like Caleb Williams or even Drake May this year has kind of like held his stock. Last year, Bryce Young kind of hovered around up there. So occasionally you have like this really elite guy who you just know is coming out. To me, there's none of those next year. Shedeur's probably a 1st-round pick, but there are things that he needs to work on, and his team definitely held him back last year. And hopefully he has like a better team around him so he can actually show things off a little bit more this year. But as of now, he has to be the top quarterback in next year's draft. There's definitely no doubt about that. But there's a lot more data that's going to come before it's time to make a decision.
And he is the top quarterback in next year's draft right now, but he's not that generational prospect. Even Sean Payton said teams were going to intentionally tank for Caleb Williams, and even that didn't happen. And Shedeur isn't Caleb, so the point is that teams are not thinking about Shedeur next year and saying, let's trade Russell Wilson or cut Russell Wilson now so we can build around Shedeur next year. Maybe that'll become the conversation if the Broncos start off 1-7. Let's hope that's not the case, but that's not the talk right now.
What more do people need to see? He's
Out of
done
Shedeur?
it at HBCU. He's done it here in Colorado. His O-lineman couldn't block Hank or
true.
Zach. I don't know what more people need to see. Like, he's done everything in his power to put that team on his back. He's been very successful all throughout college. His dad is a Hall of Fame football player. You know, that lineage always works out, whether you are... I mean, we can talk about tons of players in the NFL. Like, it always works out. I think he is a generational talent, whether people want to give him credit for it or not. I don't think he needs to do anything more. I think he would have been going 1st round this year, or should have gone 1st round this year. I think he'll go 1st round next year.
I think it would have been 1st round.
I think he'll go number 1.
I guess the concerns are he doesn't have a massive arm, so like you come in with that in mind. Like, he isn't like the Drake May, Caleb Williams. Like, he doesn't have like a bad arm. He probably even has like a good, but he isn't like elite right there. He held on to the ball a little bit too long last year, which might have just been because of the receivers not getting open. Like, I'm not willing to put that on because I didn't watch like super analytically. Like, he got sacked a lot, probably because of the offensive line, but also he does have a tendency to hold on to the ball. So I just hope to see it all come together. It's like you have the offensive line, you have the receivers, and so I'd like to see just like the ball gets out on time, the offense is on schedule, like those 2-minute drills we saw early in the season. That's just what you see all year.
For us to be on schedule, we got to get out of here right now.
Oh, dang.
What time is that? You want to say it.
I'm just saying, like, we critique different players differently. Like, all those things you're saying right now are all things that Caleb Williams did this year in the exact same way. Took too many sacks, held onto the ball, made mistakes. Like, was his exact season. Part of it was because the O-line wasn't very good. But at the same time, that's the way he played. So if you're going to judge Shador in that way, then we have to judge Caleb Williams in that way.
I think that when you look at, I'm curious what the sack numbers are. I also like Caleb when he tries to escape a defender, he's elite at that. Like he is potentially when he gets to the NFL. I guess Lamar is probably right in front, but the way he can manipulate a pocket, the way he can juke, the burst he has to get by, that's different. And Shador is good at that as well, but he isn't a freak at it. He's just really good at it. I think that the other thing with Caleb Williams is that he did more when he was on the run escaping. I like the quick release, like the hitting guys downfield. I like that better. I also think his receivers did a much better job of getting open in those scramble drills, and maybe that could have been better for Shador, but felt like there were a lot of times when he did escape the pocket, when it still wasn't turning into a productive play. There were times, of course, when it did happen, but it just didn't happen at the same rate as Caleb, and that could just be talent around him. Again, that's why I go into it saying he's the top quarterback, but I do wonder if maybe it just kind of looks like chaos when he gets to the NFL and it isn't so controlled. But if he comes out this year with the offensive line and the receivers and all just looks as sharp as it did at points, I'm sold.
We just cracked open a great conversation, which we can dive into as we
For
continue
another
along.
year. 14 months of
another
it.
year. I love it. So keep rolling with us. Thank you for tuning into the mailbag. Drop your comments for next week's mailbag over at thednvr.com over on this Die Hard mailbag post. Thank you.